Hello, welcome to our vendor sessions of the 23rd Annual Northwest Interlibrary Loan and Resource Sharing Conference. Today's date is September 20th, 2023. This session is titled 10 Essential Tools to Elevate Your ILL Experience and will be presented by Alena Miller and Peter Collins from OCLC. My name is Katie DeVet and I am the convener for this session. Just so you're aware, this session is being recorded with permission from the presenters. Because they retain the copyright to the information they are presenting, they may choose to request its removal from public viewing in the future by written request to Northwest ILL. However, at this time, it is planned that recordings will be made available once captions have been added. Attendees will be notified when recordings are available. To turn live captioning on, click the CC link at the bottom of the screen and select Show Subtitles. If you have a question during the session, please use the Q&A function in Whova, and I will pose these to the presenter at the end of their presentation. We will not be monitoring the chat for questions. When the presentation ends, please complete the post-session survey in Whova, located on the conference homepage and the session chat. We will post this in the chat at that time. On this note, Alena and Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. It's great to be here with you all today. And Alena, why don't I just hand it to you to introduce yourself quickly?
Okay. Hi, I'm Alena Miller. Many of you have probably seen both Peter and I do some presentations for OCLC across the past few years. So welcome. We're always happy to participate here at Northwest ILL.
Yeah, and we're really excited to be here. I was joking with Alena that she might not want to do presentations with me in the future because she did a lot of the work of pulling this presentation together, including this idea around 10 essential tools that we hope you walk away really understanding how to look at your operation and activate some tools that'll help you in the future. So let's look at the agenda, Alena.
Okay, yeah, and I think they ask us to turn our cameras off just to make sure. So sorry, if anyone was really looking forward to watching us talk, we're going to go off camera here for the time being.
All right, and we wish I love being with you all in person. That's where it's a little easier to hand back and forth. We're going to be handing back and forth as we go through these 10 tools today. And so I apologize if there's any next slide. Alena's running the slides for us today, and we haven't found a way on Zoom to share. But what we're going to be looking at is this toolbox. And we were thinking of how to represent that, and your phone is perhaps a good way to think about it. There are some things you do every day on your phone. There are other things that you check in on periodically. And as we go through and talk about the 10 tools today, you can think about it in that respect. Some are going to be about things you want to incorporate into your daily routine. And others are things that you maybe schedule or do periodically to make sure your operation is continuing to function at an efficient level. So let's dive in. And Alena, you were going to talk about the concept of the scorecard, I think, how libraries could evaluate their operation. Sorry, we're just getting this down. There's a link on this slide that will go to a PDF where you could download this.
Sorry, Peter. I had muted myself and couldn't figure out how to unmute, so I apologize. So sorry for interrupting, but yes. So as we go through that presentation today, we thought we would give you a scorecard to try to just self-evaluate how you're doing for each of the different areas that we talk about. And so you can go to oc.lc ILL scorecard and download a copy of that. Realize when you do go there, it is going to just download to your download file folder, and you'll have to open it up from there. But it is a Word document that you can open either in Google Docs or in Microsoft Word, and go ahead and mark your scores right in the sheet. And hopefully as we talk, we'll give you some better ideas around how you can score yourself in each area. 1 being probably need to do some work, and 10 like you've nailed that area. So and then also know that the second page of the scorecard document has links to more information. So that's an even better way than just the little bit that Peter and I will get to talk about today. But that you can get more information and start to get a sense if you're doing everything in that area that makes sense for your library. And so, Peter, you talk about holdings.
Let's dive into holdings. So ensuring your holdings are accurate. And this is really important because your holdings are effectively an inventory of what you have available to share with other libraries. So having your holdings up to date is incredibly important for ensuring that you're getting requests for material that you can circulate. So if we look at the next slide, what I was saying is about the holdings, about being an inventory. But what's incredibly, sometimes when I talk to interlibrary loan staff and librarians about holdings, they're like, well, I don't really have a control about that. That's in the cataloging department. But we have tools, and you're really the front line. You're the ones who recognize when holdings get out of date. And you're an important piece of that link. And so we have at OCLC, we launched about a year ago, a holdings update, which is free for all cataloging customers with OCLC. And these are some of the results that we've seen. So if you're getting requests for material that's not owned, and you can go and look at those reports in your statistics, then this is something that you can bring to the attention of folks in your library that, hey, let's update our library so it's represented, and it eases the operation in interlibrary loan, because like we see here, some large libraries saw a decrease of 90% for things they were saying not owned to. But it doesn't stop there. There's more to holdings around serial publications. So serial publications in print serials, there's something called local holdings records. Some libraries have done a great job over the years of keeping those up to date, and you can see when you're ordering from them, they own 1993 to 1998 of a given journal or whatever. Those are probably more work to keep up to date. But what libraries are finding and using the power of now more and more is the knowledge base. The WorldCat knowledge base allows you to simply go in and say, I subscribe to Science Direct, to this, this, and this, and then it just automatically pulls in all your holdings within your journal packages. So it's very easy to update. And with the knowledge base, you can actually integrate this into your ILL tools. So if you're using WorldShare ILL, Tipasa, ILLiad, you can bring that holdings information into the system so that you can actually leverage that as you're going through the process of processing requests. And then it also helps with the automations, because as we build automated lender strings, the smart lender strings, the system is looking at things like journal coverage, license terms. All of that information is pulled in when a lending string is created, and it ensures that requests are filled quickly and generally by the first library in the lender string. So here's a look at the knowledge base integration within WorldShare ILL or Tipasa. What this does is automatically pull in a link to the resource during your lending workflow so that you can click directly to that article, download the PDF, upload through Article Exchange, and be done literally in less than a minute. So it really speeds up the lending workflow to have that integration. And this is just, one proof point right here that make sure your collections are in the WorldCat knowledge base. The seamless integration with your holdings ensures quick and efficiently locate items in your collection.
Thanks, Peter. So moving on to our second tip, and I should have mentioned early on in that first slide I was talking about with the scorecard, that what we're going to go through today is, we'll have 10 tools or tips that you can definitely use to take things up a notch. And I don't want anyone to think that they need to do all 10 at once. We don't want to overwhelm you, but we're going to go through some of the ways that if you're not doing all of these things, you might pick one or two to work on. And if you really have several of them to work on, pick one or two. They don't have to be done necessarily in any order, but there are ways that you're going to be able to just optimize your ILL service for your patrons. And show value for your organization. So I'm going to talk next about our second tip, which is to make sure that your lending policies are clear. Many of you probably have your OCLC policies directory entries in very good shape, but often we see things that look outdated or just aren't super clear. So I want to just recommend that you do go check these every so often, make sure that they reflect your current policies about what you do and don't lend. Some people still have notes in there about being closed for COVID, and that's probably not true anymore. Things like that. So go and make sure that everything that, it's clear what you lend, what you charge, if you're willing to reciprocate. And I just love that notes field at the bottom because it really lets you clarify what you were intending with your particular policy. And just a reminder that policies are truly just informational. So they don't actually cause any action in the system. They're just really to communicate to others about your policies. And we'll talk in a little bit about actually setting up deflections, which do actually do something in the system, but these are informational for others to read and understand what you lend. It's also really important that you update your contacts. So if you have a change in who's doing ILL processing, and I came across one the other day that didn't have any way of contacting the library. So at least make sure you've got a group email or a personal email address in there so that if somebody has a question about your policies or a specific request, that they can get a hold of you easily without having to dig around and figure out who's processing ILL at your library. You also want to delete anything old. I kind of alluded to this earlier. Sometimes people still even have mentions of Arial in their contacts. So just give it a look and make sure it's updated. Another policy that's set in the directory is the days to respond. We do get questions about this because a lot of libraries do have their days to respond set on the high end. And I'm sure they're doing that to make sure that they're able to respond. They don't want time to run out before they get a chance to respond. But what we'll encourage you to do is to find that balance that lets you have enough time to process the requests, but it also keeps requests moving. And we're going to talk a lot here in a minute about saying no quickly. And this is one of those tips that if you set your days to respond to something more like 4 days, that means that request is only going to sit with you for that amount of time. Whereas if you have it set at 8, it's going to sit there for 8 days. And part of the idea of getting requests going through the system is that we want to keep them moving. And if you know you're not going to be able to get to it, then it's best if it can get to the next lender. And finally, just a note about hours and closures. This is a really handy way to letting other libraries know about your service. They can easily see when you're open or closed and if you might yet be able to process something today. Also, the closures can be set up ahead of time to automatically change your supplier status to know on the days that you know you're going to be out of the office or for whatever reason unable to fulfill requests.
All right, thank you, Alena. And Alena already started to talk a little bit about this, but saying no quickly. Sometimes saying no can even be fun in life, but with ILL, it's simply important to say no if either there's going to be a significant delay at your site, and it seems like a fairly common thing, push those on to other libraries. But when you don't, for a lot of requests, you don't even have to do that yourself. So we have ways to automatically say no to requests that you can't fill. And one of the ones that's incredibly important, saving a lot of time on the network, is real-time availability. So this is looking at what it says, availability. Is that item that your library owns, is it currently available? This is for physical items. Is it on the shelf? Is it checked out? What's the current status? And the system can look at that status at the moment the lending request arrives at your library. And if it's not available, move it on to the next supplier. And on the next slide, we have a little snapshot of a request moving through the system. In this case, the request was ordered. The first library had a deflection set up, which we'll also talk about. And then the second library the request went to, the system checked the item status. The item was unavailable. It moved it to the next supplier. All this happened in 2 seconds. So Alena was talking about days to respond. And even if you just think about, showing up to work, drinking your coffee, getting logged in, looking through the queues, checking the catalog, and then saying no, like this is moving requests, like we can see on the screen, 650,000 requests, just boom, they're on to the next supplier, not sitting around in queues waiting for someone to have to do that manual process. So if you look at your statistics, reasons for no, and you see system checked availability, you already have this set up. We have a lot of libraries set up. If you're not seeing that, we want to talk to you on how we can integrate with your ILS to do this. And also, if you see it, but you have questions about those statistics or are worried it isn't configured properly, we're happy to check that to work with you to make sure this is working accurately for your institution. And this is just a great quote from Brian Miller, that at Ohio State, they saw a reduction in ILL requests for checked out items from 30% to 5%. So they were getting a lot of requests for material that they just couldn't supply. They own it. They couldn't supply it at that moment. And now the system is just pushing those on. And there are still some that come through due to dynamics, but most of that is automated right out of the lending queue.
Great. Yeah, we're really been happy with the uptake on the real-time availability. So thanks for going over that. And we had a few other ideas for you on more ways to be able to say no quickly. And I already talked about a couple of those, making sure that your supplier status is no when your service, if people are on vacation or your library is closed for the holidays, make sure that you set your status to no, even if you're just out sick one day and nobody's going to get to it. Maybe you can get in there and turn that off for today. And then the days to respond we talked about. And then I just wanted to mention, because I brought it up earlier, the deflections. And so even if you only set up some really basic deflections, they are yet another way to get things through the lender string faster. So if you know that you don't offer audio video for loan, or you don't have you don't want to lend out newer materials. And then the third example here is about the e-license terms, and Peter was talking about the knowledge base and the collections. When you set them up, you can say whether or not that collection has licensing that allows for interlibrary loan. And if it doesn't, that can be flagged, and then you would come in and set up a deflection that says, you know, if I don't have the licensing for this collection, go ahead and deflect it. So those are just our ways that we came up with for saying no quickly. And then I got to thinking after a while, it's really important to say yes quickly as well. And so that's our fourth tip. And so the way to do that, you guys have heard us talking a lot about the automatic request manager, ARM, and to set up automations. So this is where a few months ago, we added in some lending automations. And so these are ways, they don't necessarily say no quickly, but they help you process your requests accurately and more quickly, because the idea is that you would set up some match criteria on various things, like what group is your borrower in, or you know, the type of request or the format, and then it can automatically apply some the constant data that makes sense for that request, so that you're not in there manually updating fields or making decisions. It looks at, you know, what is it about this request, and what can I sort of pre-fill in this request to move things through faster. And then with Tipasa, there's some additional functionality that helps with branch. If you have multiple branches or multiple shelving locations and you want to be able to tag those for different workers to process, then you can also utilize lending automation for that if you have Tipasa. So rather than try to go through, you know, how to use the automated request manager, I just wanted to point out that in our documentation, you can get that at help.oclc.org, or you can use the short URL oc.lc/support. And if you just search on lending automation, you'll get to the page where it talks about the different, it gives some examples of different ways you might use lending automation. So again, it's basically, let's look for certain things about the request, that's the matches, and then you tell it what action you want, which is usually to apply a certain constant data record that you've also set up. So some really basic examples are that you want to look for people, libraries, requests coming from a certain group of libraries. In this case, it's tri-state. And you want to charge all of those libraries $10. And so you can set that up very easily. And that way that constant data record is applied to those items that come from those borrowers. Then another example is if you want a shorter loan period for your AV materials than for your books. So you can set it up so that a different constant data record is used for whenever something comes in with a format for AV. And then there's a couple of other more advanced automations out there, just to give you an idea of what you can do with these things. So this one gets at kind of 3 different categories of borrowers and who gets charged what. And there's another one that even mixes the idea of the formats in with the charging. And so this is probably not going to be exactly what you want. It's just to give you an idea of the kinds of things you can do with lending automation.
Thanks, Alena. And yeah, really the thing about automation, I know we talk about it a lot, but it's really making your job easier, letting you focus on the important things. And then also with the, you know, what Alena was referencing about different charges, if your operation does charge different fees for different borrowers, or even just you're managing reciprocal versus ones that you charge, we've worked with libraries where there's looking back through the data, there's a lot of inconsistency on either they're not charging the people they want to charge, or they're charging people they don't want to and having to clean it up later. The automation really can help set that so that the system just recognizes, oh, this is a library you do charge, this is a library you don't, and you don't have to worry about some of that detail. it's particularly important too if you're in an operation with, where it's more than just you. Yeah, and then, but I wanted to talk about a couple other things, particularly what the automation that Alena was just talking to was WorldShare ILL and Tipasa. For ILLiad, there are tools that you can use to do similar things with routing rules, and so it's not just for WorldShare and Tipasa libraries to think about. Also for ILLiad libraries to think about ways that you can streamline that process. And then this tip of check your lending queues at least twice a day. That's sort of a best practice or a guideline. We heard a lot about guidelines in the first session today and how they're not laws. They don't mean you have to do it all the time, but it's a reference point. But we've seen other operations that it's like, oh, I do my physical items once a day or morning and noon or one. And but I check my copy requests more often, and anything I can fill electronically, I fill immediately. So before I leave for the day, I look through and see if there's any copy requests I can fill electronically, because that means they go out today instead of sitting for 16 or 18 hours till someone's in the next day to look at those. So this is something to think about, but also to think about your operation in, more closely, and just how do you say yes quickly? And sometimes that means partitioning out different workflows because some things are easier to fill than others. But we did want to mention Express, because one of that tip about checking your queue twice a day or clearing out electronic articles at the end of the day before you go home, a lot of our Express libraries, these are best practices that they implemented that help them qualify for the Express program. And but what I always talk to libraries about is, it isn't that Express libraries are working the weekend or processing requests 24 hours a day. They're really just using those best practices to make sure requests don't needlessly sit around. And that has realized an average 10-hour turnaround time for the Express program. And if we look at the next slide, it has some powerful numbers about really what is Express. It's over 1,000 libraries, and the content available to your library at this rate of speed, that delivery time, basically same day, is all of this content is out there that these libraries are sharing between each other. And so if your library hasn't qualified for Express yet, we really think that some of these lending best practices, these lending tools that we're talking about can help you. We evaluate Express libraries to join Express 3 times a year. So looking at data, and we encourage you to think about how to make your lending operation so that you're also part of that group. And then this just is another amazing quote. During the first 6 months, 30% of their Express requests were filled in 1 hour or less, 40% were filled in 2 hours or less, and 10 requests were filled in 2 minutes or less. That's just, someone must have been on the other end, just like filling those electronic articles, happened to be in the queue, but that's amazing response time that libraries are seeing through that program.
Excellent. Yeah. Express is another one of those that we're really happy about, and anybody that wants some tips or help getting their turnaround times down to qualify for that, certainly reach out to us. We've done that with several libraries successfully. So right now we're going to transition. So far we've talked all about lending and getting lending requests processed quickly. We're going to talk next about borrowing, and then we're going to move into some general tips. There was something I was going to mention and it just slipped my mind. So hopefully it'll pop back in a second. So I'll just go ahead and start talking about the borrowing side, and the automated request manager I mentioned. That's what you use for that lending automation I was talking about. Was really powerful on the borrowing side. And, we've had many libraries tell us how pleased their patrons are with the speed that they've been able to accomplish by automating easy requests, or straightforward or standard requests that I like to call them, so that those actually can go out to lenders a lot of times without being touched by a staff person, but yet at the same time, it frees up the ILL staff to spend time on those more difficult requests, and those can actually get processed more quickly as well. So, let's just go to the next slide. Again, going back to our documentation, we always recommend that every library sets up 2 basic automations so that your loan requests and your copy requests that come in with all the information that they need. Hopefully you all are using patron request forms, and and if they're hooked up to a discovery system or your catalog, that it's passing those identifier information like the ISSN or the ISBN or the OCLC number, so that the system can match on it and quickly tell who's got it and who's going to be most likely to fulfill the request. And I think that in itself is the essence of automating your borrowing processes with the automated request manager. So in this case, for today, I'm going to kind of gloss over the first couple of things that are shown here in the actions column, because those are checkboxes that we just tell people to check automatically, because if it's something that's in your holdings, you probably want to know about it. So that'll get sent to your review file to make sure that you really need to do an ILL for it. And then the duplicate requesting, if the system can identify a duplicate, then you want that turned on. But the meat of what I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if you can see my cursor here, is the last 3 lines here for the loans. So you don't have to send things to lenders. You can always tell the system that you want to check things before you send them out. But the real power is to send things to lenders. If the system knows what it is and it can find somebody that holds it in your group of lenders that you typically work with, then the request can just go out. And that means that, if one of your students or your patrons are making a request late in the day on Friday, then they don't have to wait until Monday morning when you can come in and process that request. And so those are things I was talking about when I said, people have told us how pleased their users are with getting things more quickly. You're able to save that, perhaps that whole weekend, if you can get that request out to some potential lenders. So here we're just saying, if the item is held, so first of all, we know what the item is because we've got enough identifying information with the request. And then if someone in my path of lenders that I've set up holds this thing, then we will apply the constant data for loans. So you'd have a standard and constant data record, and then it can just go ahead on out. If you need to be more complicated than this, you certainly can. You can set up multiple constant data records, and your match criteria in that case would be more complicated than what I'm showing here. But just to give you an idea that this is essentially what we're talking about. When we say 2 basic automations, we're saying set up something for like the simplest set of loans that you get, the simplest set of copies that you get, and get those out, because you can then spend your time on the more difficult things. So I was talking about custom holdings groups, and we get a lot of questions about profiled groups and custom holdings groups. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that briefly. So the profiled groups, when you're setting up your automated request manager, or even when you're just setting up custom holdings paths, you'll see these terms. The profiled groups are fixed groups that OCLC maintains the membership for. So if those groups need to be changed, somebody needs to reach out to us, and then we'll make those updates. But the custom holdings groups, those are what you're going to be able to define exactly the way that you want. So it could be a group of your local group, your consortium, or it can be people that you've worked with that supply things to you for free. You can really define a custom holdings group in any way. Some of the common profiled groups, the ones that OCLC maintains, are around libraries that will share with each other for free, or libraries that will that have extended loan periods. And then we also manage the eBook group in terms of adding and removing members. So if you're able to lend whole ebooks, so you've worked with the publishers to get those rights, we'd be glad to add you to the eBook group. But these are just examples of kind of fixed groups that you can utilize in your lender strings. And then there are also tons and tons of like what I'll call regional groups out there too. And so those can be helpful as well. And so Peter and I were talking about this yesterday. There's so many different ways you can set up your paths for your lenders. And so these are just a couple of kind of high level thoughts that we had. If you're talking about books or loans and you're wanting to find them for free, then your path is maybe going to look something like this, where you'd have your local consortium. So you guys already have reciprocal agreements in place. So you're probably going to go to them first. Then there's the Elvis group. If you're a member of Elvis, then all of those libraries will lend to you for free. And then maybe you have some other more extended, maybe more regional reciprocal lenders. And then you can just keep working your way out until you can actually get the loan. The nice thing about the path is that it starts at the left, right? And so it's only going to get to that right part if somebody that's in a group on the left, if there's no one there that can fulfill it. And then our other example was more with copies. You don't really need to have as many groups with that. You might make up your own list of fast groups. If you're an Express member, you can just use the Express list for sort of your first group in your path. And then you might go out to your consortium, because you guys probably would have agreements in your consortial group that you prioritize each other's requests. And then maybe you would go to the world. With copies, you can kind of include anybody, because hopefully geographics doesn't weigh in there. So just when you get you get your paths in place, and you've got all your groups of lenders that you want to utilize, and you've got them all ordered in your path, then you're really able to set up your automations, your automated request manager. And the great thing, and we just can't say this enough, the automated request manager is able to factor in all of these things instantaneously, so that you don't have to worry about the request going to somebody where it's going to sit for 2 or 3 or 8 days. So it's just amazing. It can check for the deflections, the electronic licenses that we talked about earlier, your serial holders and your LHRs. Of course, it's going to use your paths that you defined to go through the string. And then the biggest thing is it does look at the actual turnaround times for a library. So statistically, who's going to turn this around the fastest? And then it also checks which libraries don't, how many requests we've already sort of sent to those libraries, so we don't overload anybody. And I'm sorry, this really kind of became a lecture on automated request manager, but hopefully if you have any questions about it, please do go check out the link that we've given here, and also just reach out to us about it. But it really has saved libraries a lot of time. We have a story out on our website about Baldwin Wallace University. They're using WorldShare ILL, so they don't use Tipasa or ILLiad, but they've set up their automations, and they've been super pleased with. They were able to, I have in my notes that for their borrowing turnaround times, that they when they set up their automations, they saved 20 hours for copies and 2 full days for physical items. So again, just thinking about maybe the ILL person isn't there to process stuff right away, but with automation, they can just get that out to lenders and save some real turnaround time to get the things for their patrons.
Thank you, Alena. One of the things I love about, the holdings paths and groups and that example of a copy and a loan path that Alena put up. One of the things I just love about that, we don't have to go back. I just was going to add right
It's
there.
All right.
Is that the power is in your hands with who you group into your tier 1, your tier 2, your tier 3, as you set up the system. Some things are like a black box in life and in ordering and in tools that we use. It gives you the power. This isn't something you have to go in and configure every day or worry about. It's something, if you set it up a while ago, make sure that's still your priority. But it really gives you the power to define your consortia, define your partners, to participate in groups like Express or Elvis or other groups. And it's up to you to be able to control how things go. And I know from working in ILL, we like to be able to know who we're going to and set up our favorite suppliers and our favorite partners. But now we're moving on to seamless delivery with article exchange. So this is for delivering, PDF files, copies of articles, book chapters, and it's fully integrated into WorldShare ILL and Tipasa. If you're using ILLiad, Odyssey works very much the same, and they're both compatible. So a library doesn't have to, an ILLiad library can send through Odyssey and a receiving library get it within article exchange. It's all integrated. But this is incredibly important. It's the foundation of how requests get between libraries and delivered out to the user. So let's look at, so it delivers the documents easily, securely. So this is really important where when you're filling a lending request in WorldShare ILL or Tipasa, you just click drop the file, it uploads to the server, and then you fill the request. So like I was talking about earlier with, maybe it's 4:30, I leave at 5, I'm going to check the lending for incoming electronic requests, and I can just download the PDF, drop it in there. And like I said, it's like less than a minute to supply those. And then when it arrives at the borrowing library, with Tipasa or ILLiad, there are ways to configure this to go direct to the patron. With WorldShare, you do have to click on the email to the patron, and libraries that like to preview articles do that in a mediated fashion. But you have the power to decide how your system works and then to get the electronic file to the user quickly. And then copyright is also integrated into that. We didn't go into that too heavily here. So another really important function within the system is the IFM, ILL fee management. So this is a way that libraries can charge each other. Sometimes this is really important for cost recovery. If you're shipping a physical item between your library and another library, you may need to account for that simply to cover the expenses of that. So it allows libraries, when they need to charge, to have that fully integrated into the system. So, it reconciles those fees, but the big thing is it saves you the time. So I think the next slide actually shows a report from one library, and this is over 1 month. And you can see like the total at the top, 326 transactions were supplied and charged by this library. And can you imagine cutting 326 invoices and then trying to track payment, process checks, all of that is handled by the system, reconciled with debits and credits based on what you borrow, what you lend, and then, either the payment, a single payment is on your invoice or a credit for the lending that you did from the other libraries. So this is incredibly powerful feature that I think it's been around so long, I think we sometimes take it for granted, but it is really important. And if you can lend for free and participate in reciprocal, that's great, but it's an important tool when you do need to charge for transactions. And then integrating with your library management system. So let's look at this, because this can really make the day-to-day management of requests much easier. So NCIP, which stands for NISO Circulation Interchange Protocol, it's integrated so that basic things like check-in, check-out, and then the circulation of borrowed items can be managed by the ILS. And so it just saves you time. And on the next slide, we have a snapshot of the systems that we have integrated with for Tipasa and WMS, or WorldShare for WMS. We're building out more and more of this integration because we see the time savings. And if you're running ILLiad, you can search in there. I know there are a number of add-ons that do NCIP functionality for some of these systems. So you could look at also integrating that way.
Excellent. Okay. So we got two more tips. So I'll try to run through these pretty quickly. Many of you have probably been to other sessions where we talk extensively about statistics. So today, just a reminder to always just, make sure you're using your ILL statistics to, just keep track of how you're lending and borrowing. And if you're using document delivery, how things are going. Has anything changed? Do we need to update anything? Do things differently? But also that, equally important element of having the ability to show your managers, your library administration, any of your stakeholders, just how important your operation is. And it can be internally to your institution, but also the fact that you're contributing to the community by supporting other people, getting your materials out and used at other libraries. So just to review, hopefully everyone has been to stats.oclc.org. You go out there, you can tell it how many months of data you want, up to 5 years. And then you've got a list of ILL reports that you can download, manipulate, make charts with, look at trends. We're showing here several examples of the different kinds of reports that you can download. And so I went through actually it's been a couple years back now, but it was a really good session that Jenny Rosenfeld and I put together on, it was a workshop series, but the last part of the series was the different reporting tools, the things that you want to make sure you're doing regularly. And so I won't go into all of these, but just some basic things like, checking on how your deflections are doing. Are the right things being deflected? Do you need to make updates there? Or the last one that we have listed here, the lender string report. You don't need to do that every month, but every once in a while you want to go out and just see, okay, the people that I consider to be my best lending partners, are they really? And then if they are, do I have them in the right spot, the right custom holdings group in my lender string, or are there some people that aren't doing, turning things around as well as we want them to, or maybe they're not filling anything for us anymore for some reason. Those would be ones you'd want to move sort of down in the path or even consider taking them out. So just this idea of continuous improvement, a lot of things you can set and forget. but then you want to always just every few months at least go and just make sure things are still working as well as you want them to. These screens just show some example reports, your borrowing activity. Again, just having an idea in your mind how many requests that come in, and what kinds of turnaround times and fill rates are you getting for your patrons. ILL fee management's the one that Peter was showing. And then the lender reasons for no, that's another great one. You always want to check this one to see why you're turning away requests. System checked availability is great. That just means it's the real-time availability that Peter talked about is working. But you might want to look into, well, why did I have to answer not owned? Or are my deflections am I deflecting the things that I'm expecting to deflect? And then lastly, we just always encourage everyone to be, good contributors to the resource sharing and the ILL community. You're here today at this conference to learn and to contribute to the community. And that's really super important. We were just, this is just talking about not just community things like listservs and community center, but your impact on the community. Are you doing the right things to sort of be a good partner? So you've got your policies up to date. You're moving things through quickly. Your holdings are up to date, so everyone is aware of what you have. All of the things that we talked about today. And OCLC does have a new community center platform. Many of you have probably seen emails and notices about that. It's the essence of it, the purpose of it is the same, but the platform is much improved. So if you haven't checked it out yet, I'd encourage you to do that. We were trying to think as we were polishing things up yesterday, Peter and I were thinking about the different ways that you contribute. When you're here at the conference, you may not be presenting, but you're commenting and you're contributing in the chat and asking questions. Same thing on the listservs, helping each other out there, participating in the Facebook groups like the ILLers. Or, another way that we really appreciate is when you have enhancement requests or ideas, getting those into our community pages and getting other people's thoughts so that we can really do a good job at prioritizing changes to the systems. And I think I just was supposed to let Peter do that section, but I'm just going to keep going. So
go for it, Alena.
All right. So, the last thing was just to wrap up and to say, again, go back to your scorecard and see, try to get a sense of how you're doing in each area. Again, it doesn't have to be everything at once. It doesn't have to be in a specific order, but we wanted to give you sort of our perspective on the things that you can do to kind of elevate your ILL service. Again, the second page on that scorecard has all kinds of links for more information. I'd encourage you to, if there's areas that you're interested in doing better, to go check those out. And then if you still need more information, definitely reach out to OCLC support. Our support team is really, really knowledgeable, and they know how to fix a lot of things. And if they need to consult with others around the building, they know when to do that as well. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this other than to say the tools, again, it's kind of a duplicate of a couple of slides ago, just in terms of, the tools that we're giving you here help you extend your library's collection so you can access things from around the world. Hopefully you're saving time so that you can spend your time more quickly, or more important and more higher activities. And you're serving your patrons, you're delivering things quickly and securely. You're taking advantage of IFM so that you're not spending staff time on invoices. And with the reporting, you are able to show the value of your service.
Thank you, Alena. Thank you all for joining us. We have just a couple minutes for questions, but we were planning to do a breakout session as well. We were trying to schedule it for
That's
immediately
right.
following this. And I'm not sure whether we got the time in Wavo proper to start in.
Yes, so I apologize if you did sign up for the meetup with us following this session. I may, because I set it up from the East Coast time, Huva got a little confused. So I'm not exactly sure what time that session is set for. If it's not right after this session, I will set up another meetup and make sure that we get some time to answer your questions and chat more. So Katie, did you have any?
Yes, we've got a few questions from Huva in the interim. The one that's got the most votes today: how do we effectively reflect that we can't lend ebooks in our deflections? We have computer files, internet resources, e-text, and e-serials all blocked from loan, but we keep getting so many loan requests for ebooks.
Yes, I've heard that as a common issue. Peter, do you have any suggestions on that?
I don't know the deflections well enough on that, or actually, I think it really comes down to how are the ebooks cataloged, and so that we recognize that's an ebook.
Yes.
Yeah, I need a follow-up.
I think the answer, if I can speak for others on our team, there is some work in progress around bib matching and improving that, and I think that is we're hanging our hat on that in the future we're going to do a better job at it. Right now we do understand that's a frustration.
Very good. Another question, which you've spoken a little bit about, but maybe have some more info. How do we elevate the ILL experience for our patrons and still stay within budget?
I saw that question earlier, but Peter, do you want to answer that?
Well, what I've been really impressed with is the sort of resurgence, if you will, of Elvis. The library is very interested in sharing. And a misperception I had is that if a library joined, they had to lend everything for free to all the Elvis libraries. You still have the ability to assess your collection based on certain things do require charges, but if you can lend a good majority of your collection for free, then it really is one opportunity to keep the costs down and have more reciprocal relationships.
Right, like especially if you're able to do copies for free, you just need to be real clear in your policies in OCLC policies directory if there are things that you can't lend for free. But yeah, and we do have the brand new Elvis page. It's listed in the resources that I was talking to, oc.lc/Elvis, that talks all about that. I was going to add that we didn't really mention this today, Peter, but all of these things that we talked about are included in the subscription for WorldShare ILL or Tipasa or ILLiad. So we aren't, you know, you don't have to pay extra for any of this stuff. You don't pay for Elvis. You don't pay for Express. You don't pay for.
It's really Express is simply about providing at that level. Then you get access to other libraries doing that. So
yeah, so a lot, all the things that we talked about are included with your general subscription. So
excellent. And we have about 1 more minute. So one more quick question. What would you say is the #1 tool you can't live without?
When I saw this, that's hard. I mean, I think IFM is incredibly important if you are billing because of just the amount of time savings and overhead and management. But for free, I think it's the article exchange and the electronic delivery. And particularly if you can be part of Express to get that really quickly. So that isn't one, but it really based on your priority and the type of library, those are the top of the list in my mind. I don't know, Alena, if you have one.
My answer for that is if you're really going for speed and patron satisfaction, making them super happy, I would set up the automations so you get the smart lender strings, because those smart lender strings get it to either, like Peter said, the first or the second lender in that string almost always is fills that item. So even though it does take a little bit of setup, it's well worth the time. And you saw Laura D'Amato's quote about how much time that they've saved. So.
Excellent. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Peter and Alena may be going through our Q&As later, or you can join them on their meetup once it gets scheduled. So as it currently stands, Northwest ILL thanks everyone for attending 10 essential tools to elevate your ILL experience. Please fill out our post-session survey. We have reposted the link in the chat. And if you have enjoyed this session and want to continue the conversation, you can continue to use chat in this session or move over to the community section of Whova, where you can find chat boards or create a virtual meetup. And like Alena said, one is coming.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.